Hey, everybody. Hope and pray that you're doing well today as we come to our word from the Word. And today, that word is observe. Observe. I love that picture. I've used ones like it before. I love the fact the little pawn chess piece looking into the mirror, seeing a reflection of the king. And wow, how true that is for our lives as Christians, that we should be able to look into the mirror and see Christ. That's what when we look into Scripture, right? We look into Scripture and we see Christ. This is our mirror to help show us exactly what we're supposed to look like, how we are to look like Christ, to act like Christ, to talk like Him, to treat others like He would. Go back to the old WWJD bracelets, right? What would Jesus do? And if we live our lives according to that, we will see just that. We will observe that in our own lives. Now, you get to the end of Paul's this second epistle, Second Corinthians. We're in chapter 13 today. Going to look simply at one verse, and let's just dive in, look at that verse, and then we'll move on with our conversation today. He says, "Examine yourselves as to whether you are in the faith. Test yourselves. Do you not know yourselves that Jesus Christ is in you? Unless indeed you are disqualified." Now, you think about this, and commentators will go back and forth a little bit on this, and maybe leaning towards one side or the other. So, is he asking them, are they saved, or is he asking them, is he asking them to observe their own salvation, or is he asking them to observe their walk? Well, one thing, let's remember as you go through this, he's been talking to genuine believers. Now, he makes arguments, for those to be listening um, about checking your salvation. Essentially, maybe let's just kind of keep that thought. As he's talking about even his own apostolic resume of things, telling them not to boast, not to pay attention to these false teachers, right? And so some of the things he was writing in there was kind of directed at those false teachers and false apostles, and obviously he knew they weren't born again. But it does seem kind of strange that he would get here all the way at the end of his letter and then say, "Hey, by the way, are you saved?" So now part of that could be saying, "Hey, after all this, you do need to examine yourselves." But also, it's kind of this idea that here you'll see this whole chapter. I encourage you, as always, read the whole chapter, not just the one verse I'm looking at today. You see the whole thing as if he's saying, "Look, y'all been challenging my authority. You've been wondering about whether or not I'm a true apostle of Christ, if I'm a true mouthpiece of God, and if my life kind of lines up with what you think a Christian should be." So he just kind of turns it around and says, "What about you? Hey, examine your own selves to see if you're in the faith." And I think a lot of that, what he's really meaning is because he says, the word he uses, the tense of the words that he uses is active, meaning it's keep on examining, keep on testing yourselves. So that wasn't like a one time thing, like, hey, check, make sure you're saved, and then move on. It's no, keep on examining, keep on testing. And isn't that what every believer should be doing? It's a little bit about what we talked about Sunday, right? Works don't get us into heaven, but we should be working because we have gained entrance into heaven by way of Jesus Christ. It's almost as if he's writing this in a way of like, hey, don't you realize Jesus Christ is within you? How could your life not look like Christ? And kind of that, unless indeed you have been disqualified, it's almost as if, hey, if you've been disqualified because your life, not lose salvation, but you've been disqualified because your life is not living up to the God, to the Christian standard, right? We all fall short. He's not saying to be perfect, but sometimes it is. Is there anything when you observe your life? Think about this. When you observe your life, kind of looking from the outside looking in, is there enough fruit there that other people would be able to see that you're a Christian? You know Your heart is desperately wicked, deceitful and desperately wicked. Who can know it? As we look at our own lives, do we see, you know your thoughts, and you know how quickly those thoughts can turn sinful, sinful ideas, sinful temptations that we not only just a thought slips in, but we dwell on them. You know the things that you say in your heart about other people. You also know the things you say about other people when they're not around, that you say out loud to others. You know the way that you truly feel that you hide from everybody else. So when he says examine yourself, when he says to test yourself to see if you want to kind of add this in there, to see if you're walking in the faith. And as we begin to look, one, we're not going to see perfection. Paul, when he looked at his own life, he didn't see perfection. He says, man, the things I wish I was doing, I don't do. And the things I wish I didn't do, that's what I end up doing. It's the struggle that we all have. But if there is no struggle, then are you living a life that's more pleasing to the enemy than it is to God? Simply put, is there any proof in your life? Is there any observable proof in your life that you're being sanctified every day? That you are looking more like Christ today than you were yesterday? More like him today than you were the day you got saved? Whether or not that was a day ago, a year ago, a decade ago, 100 years ago, are you looking more like Christ today than you were before? That's something that you say, hey, well, I know such and such, and I know this person, man, I can't see Christ working in them. That's not what we're to examine. That's not what he's talking about right here. You will not judge others, but you will be able to examine their fruit. But let's be honest, we need to examine our own fruit first. Today, what will you observe in your life? God bless you, and I pray you have a great, great day.